The NFL draft is almost here, and there have been countless mock drafts and simulations leading up to the big event in late April. There's been months and months of hard work from NFL teams put into this 3-day event, and of course, years upon years of hard work and sacrifice from each individual draft prospect to get to where they are today. And fans often talk about maximizing what a player can do on a team, and in today's video, we will be discussing 5 NFL draft dream fits that would maximize a player's ability with a team getting the most out of them. And full transparency, this is intended to be realistic, so for example, we're not going to have Buffalo trade multiple first-round picks from the end of the first round to go get Teteroa McMillan from Arizona. And there may be a few that surprise you in today's video, as we will be doing several different positions throughout the course of the video, and there is a lot to break down, so without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with Ohio State tackle Josh Simmons going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Simmons going to the Chiefs makes a lot of sense for both sides, as when healthy, Simmons is a really good offensive tackle prospect, and it's also a position of need for the Chiefs. Despite Kansas City winning 15 games in 2024 and having a chance to win their 3rd Super Bowl in a row, it was anything but a smooth flight throughout the 24 season, and it was for several reasons. One of the biggest reasons was due to offensive line play, and we saw that down the stretch of the season. Former Chief and current Bear Joe Thuney eventually played left tackle, and the results outside of the Cleveland game were okay, minus the biggest game of the year, which of course was the Super Bowl. And obviously Joe Thuney wasn't the only Chiefs offensive lineman to play bad in the Super Bowl, as Patrick Mahomes was running around for his life. It didn't help that Wanya Morris was benched after week 13, causing Thuney to kick out to left tackle and having former undrafted free agent Mike Caliendo play left guard for the remainder of the year. But the point is, the Chiefs need offensive line help. Bad, and this is where Josh Simmons comes into play. I thought Simmons' tape was very good when he played in 2024 and legitimately looked like a franchise left tackle. I also think this offensive line class is a tad underrated by the national media, and Simmons plays into this. He had 158 pass blocking snaps in 2024 and allowed a single pressure. 1. And for reference, Wanya Morris allowed 35 pressures on 453 pass blocking snaps for Kansas City, and 2024 second-round pick Kingsley Suamataia allowed 14 pressures and 131 pass blocking snaps. And obviously playing college players and NFL players are not the same thing, but it's a miracle Kansas City got to the Super Bowl last year with how bad the offensive line was. KC also finished 29th in yards per carry last year, and while Simmons is not a Trent Williams type guy in the run game as an offensive tackle, I do think he would be an upgrade for the Chiefs in this aspect. Not only would I love Josh Simmons going to Kansas City, but there's several running backs I'd like to go to KC later in the draft too. Offensive tackle and running back are huge positions of need for the Chiefs, and if they could manage to draft Simmons along with a dynamic running back, this would be a home run for the Chiefs. Simmons' big knock was that he tore his patellar tendon in October, but he is expected to be ready for the start of the 2025 season. But Josh Simmons, Ohio State running back Travion Henderson, and Texas defensive lineman Vernon Broughton would all be good fits for the Kansas City Chiefs. Next up is a bit of a 2-for-1, and it's LSU pass rusher Braden Swinson going to the Buffalo Bills. Braden Swinson led the SEC in pressures in 2024 with 60, and I think Buffalo is in a really good situation pertaining to the 2025 draft class. They have 3 selections in the top 62 picks, with one being at 30, one being at 56 by way of a trade with sending Stephon Diggs to the Texans, and their own pick at pick 62. And why I think Buffalo is in a good situation for the 2025 class is there's not that much of a drop-off in talent between players 11 and players 35 in the 2025 class, and ultimately I don't think there's that much of a drop-off between players 40 and players 80. So for Buffalo to kind of be at the back end of both of those ranges where there's not that much of a drop-off, to me is in a good position for the Bills to be in for this draft. And Braden Swinson at this point to me would be a good Robin to another pass rusher's Batman, and Buffalo could certainly use some help at the edge rushing position. And for Buffalo to watch Philadelphia absolutely dismantle a team that has given the Bills fits over the past couple of years and that is ultimately 4-0 against them in the postseason in this era should be a sign that they should attack the trenches and to continue to attack the trenches to try and make Patrick Mahomes live hell when they play them next January, or even January in 2027, and you get the point. Braden Swinson is a really solid edge rushing prospect that I think can develop as time goes on, as he routinely got better throughout his collegiate career, which capped off him leading the conference in pressures in 2024. He can win with speed to power, he can win via a ghost move, he can win with a cross chop, and I think Braden Swinson is a player right now that is on his way to becoming a really good player. One belief that I've really bought into over the past couple of years is instead of thinking about paying one player top dollar like Greg Rousseau for an average annual value of $20 million per year, given that he signed a 4 for $80 contract this offseason, which I didn't think was bad value, by the way, and I thought it was good for both sides, for Greg for securing financial success for himself and his family, and also for the Bills for securing one of their own for the next couple of years. But instead of thinking about it like that, I try to think of it as Greg and Braden Swinson for a combined average of $22 to $23 million per year. So now you have an average annual value of your edge rushers at $11.5 to $12 million per year, which is what we call a net positive in terms of team building, which is how the Chiefs have built a dynasty and how the 49ers got to the Super Bowl over the past couple of years, is by having Brock Purdy on a lesser contract and by the Chiefs having guys like Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey and Trent McDuffie and all of those guys on contracts where they're not paying them relative to the production of what they're actually worth. So Braden Swinson going to the Bills is a tremendous pairing, and I think he would be a really beneficial player for Buffalo, especially in January, whenever he needs to get after the Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jacksons, and Joe Burrows of the world. The 2-for-1 part for Buffalo is giving them Tennessee receiver Dante Thornton Jr., who is 6'5", 200, and runs a 4.3 40. Unfortunately, Tennessee receivers haven't had the success in the NFL over the past couple of years the way other universities' receivers have, and it's due in some part to the simplicity of Tennessee's offense. When you hear 6'5", 200, 4.3 40 with Dante Thornton, he is exactly what you think he is as a player. He is a go-ball specialist that can also run a comeback route and a slant route, and there's not a lot of complexity to his game at this point in time. And the idea of pairing Dante Thornton with Josh Allen is very alluring because you can have that Marquez Valdes-Scantling type deep threat that forces defense to have to account for him on any given play, because if they don't and they want to allow him one-on-one no safety help, then Josh Allen can throw the ball from Buffalo to Rochester and defenses would pay the price. Next up is Omarion Hampton going to the Washington Commanders. This makes a lot of sense for several reasons, but it is one of my favorite prospect and team pairings in the 2025 draft. The Commanders exceeded everyone's wildest expectations in 2024 as they made it to the NFC Championship game for the first time in over 30 years, and they won a playoff game for the first time since Jaden Daniels was 5 years old. And while it was an incredible season for Washington, they lost by 30 points in the NFC Championship game, and I am a firm believer that if they are going to take the next step as a franchise, they need to be able to hand the ball off and be able to consistently run the football, meaning not having Jaden Daniels lead the team in rushing for the second consecutive year. Now, Jaden is obviously electric with the football in his hands, but I don't think it's ideal to have him lead the team in rushing simply due to the idea of him getting hit more and more as time goes on. Now, obviously, that's not to say let's make him a pocket passer and try and take the rushing element entirely out of its game, because that would be flat out ridiculous, but it is to say let's draft a very good running back prospect that also happens to be a position of need and have Jaden Daniels and Omarion Hampton grow together. I don't think Brian Robinson is a good running back, and I think he is average at best, and even that may be pushing it at times. He is entering the final year of his deal, so maybe there will be some contract year production from him, but a player who has never ran for more than 800 yards in a season should not deter you from drafting a player like Omarion Hampton. Hampton just ran for 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns for the Tar Heels, and like with Malik Neighbors last year, I think one of Hampton's weaknesses, and I say this with quotation marks around the word weaknesses, is that he's in the same draft class as Ashton Jeanty. Washington's big hurdle with acquiring Hampton is Denver potentially taking him at pick 20, and the fact that Washington only has 5 selections in the 2025 draft. They, of course, traded for Marshawn Lattimore last year and Laramie Tunsil this offseason, and only have 2 picks in the top 100. I would be incredibly surprised if this team trades up, meaning I think it is Omarion Hampton falling to pick 29 or bust. But I can't emphasize enough how much I love the idea of having a powerful bruising back in Hampton that would also be a significant upgrade from what they currently have, along with the speedy and elusive Jaden Daniels. That would be brutal to defend over the course of 4 quarters, and I really hope Omarion Hampton is soon a Washington Commander. Next up is one of my favorite prospects in the 2025 draft, and it's edge rusher Nick Scorton going to the Detroit Lions at the end of the first round. If you know anything about Nick Scorton as a pass rushing prospect and what his go-to move is, it is the inside spin move, and conveniently for Scorton and hopefully his development, the Lions also have a pretty good pass rusher on their roster that also has a go-to spin move that's kind of been developed over the past couple of years in Aiden Hutchinson. And when we talk about setting players up for success and developing NFL players, players, we talk about putting them in positions to succeed, and a good situation on the offensive side of the football is Joe Burrow getting to throw to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Everybody eats in that offense, and it's beneficial for everyone. But this would be a similar situation on the defensive side of the football, because Scourton would never be the focus or the priority of opposing offensive lines unless he blossoms and is a home run of home run draft picks at pick 28 at the end of the first round, and ultimately becomes a several-time Pro Bowler and surpasses Aiden Hutchinson, which I don't think would be the case. The point is Scourton going to Detroit would be beneficial for everybody, including Aiden Hutchinson, and there would be a process where you would have Scourton and Hutch on 3rd and 9 getting after a guy like JJ McCarthy or Jordan Love or Caleb Williams, and offensive tackles would be in hell because of how good each player is. This, in my opinion, would really be a runway for Scourton, who would fit in Detroit's defense like a glove, and ultimately the culture that Dan Campbell has built over the past couple of years, because when you watch Scourton on tape, one thing that you notice is he has a relentless motor, and that he's not taking plays off, and that he's not giving plays up, and that he really wants to set the tone and be a kick rear ends and take names later type player. Scourton unfortunately had a down 2024 season that I am willing to dismiss, and I'm not always willing to dismiss players' down years in college, but when Scourton transferred from Purdue to A&M, he bulked up from 260 to 285 and ultimately trimmed back down to around the 260 area for the combine and his pro day, and there was a reason for that. He was not in a system at A&M that was setting him up for success, and I think the results in 2024 showed that. But the player that he was in 2023 is a first-round talent, and a guy to me that at the ripe age of 21 years old is only beginning to tap the potential of who he can be as an NFL player. And if you pair him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson and give him the Robin role to Aiden Hutchinson's clear definitive Batman, who in my opinion would have won the Defensive Player of the Year award last year, this is a recipe for setting your franchise up for success and for the Lions to continue hitting on first-round picks. Next up is Missouri receiver Luther Burden going to the Green Bay Packers at pick 23, and I think this makes a lot of sense for several reasons. The Packers right now do not have a definitive wide receiver one, and I liked Jayden Reed a couple of years ago in the draft process, but I was kind of surprised when the Packers took him at number 50 overall. I thought Jayden Reed was going to be an early to mid third round selection, yet he was a mid second round pick, and unfortunately he has not been a wide receiver one or even an elite wide receiver two the way the Packers would have liked him to have been. Now, there's been flashes where Jayden Reed has a couple of great games, and he looks like he can be the guy, but unfortunately the consistency hasn't been there, and the Packers can't sit and wait around hoping that the consistency eventually comes when a player like Luther Burden will probably be there on night one of the 2025 draft. To me, the draft evaluation for Luther Burden is honestly simple. I think he's at worst the third best receiver in this class, depending on where you have Travis Hunter. I think it should go Travis, Tetairoa McMillan, and then Luther Burden, and of course if you have Travis Hunter as a corner, then I think it would go Tetairoa McMillan and then Luther Burden, period. I think there's only one definitive receiver in this class better than Luther Burden, which of course is McMillan. Luther is a really good athlete, and it shows on tape regularly. Unfortunately for Burden, he was kind of a victim of bad quarterback play and simplicity within the Missouri offense in 2024 that unfortunately has caused his stock to fall. I've tweeted several times that I think Luther Burden is a completely overthought prospect, and that he was rightfully frustrated in 2024 about his lack of targets and ultimately lack of production. Now, if you want to say that because he was a former 5-star recruit and was a first-round prospect entering the 2024 season, that he should have been more composed and held it together because at times there was pretty bad body language, I'm not going to argue with you because you legitimately have a valid point, and I would acknowledge that. But for this player that turned 21 years old in December and was 19 years old for most of the 2023 season and was a first-team All-SEC player again at 19 years old, I'm not going to bet against that, and I legitimately think that he can be a gem in this class. I think really at worst he's a top 15 player at his peak, and even again that's at his worst, and that if he's there at pick 23, Green Bay should pounce on the opportunity because I don't think they're going to be selecting in the top 10 or 12 of any upcoming draft, and for them to be able to acquire a top 10 to 15 player in this class at pick 23 to me is a dream fit, especially when you have a quarterback that could absolutely use a legitimate wide receiver one. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 46% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.